In this video, I'm going to show you the exact strategies and tactics I personally use to learn Spanish, mixed with what I wish I'd done. I saw what worked and didn't work for me over the last 15 years, then even more from you guys over the last few. But you can't learn Spanish for real with just strategies and tactics. First, you need to get your head straight. There's a reason almost nobody ends up learning Spanish, and it has nothing to do with which grammar book they used. So if you haven't seen the last video, How to Learn Spanish Part 1, stop this video now and go watch it. Seriously, I'm gonna point you to tons of videos today, but I won't tell you every time to stop and go watch them immediately. You can watch the others after you're done with this one. But if you haven't seen the last video, Part 1, go watch that now. This video will help you so much more if you do. Okay, you ready? It's finally time you see how to learn Spanish. Hola, soy Jordan, and this is a Spanish Quickie. Fast, easy Spanish lessons from somebody who speaks your language. In an ideal world, when this video's over, you'd book a flight to a Spanish-speaking country. Once there, you'd enroll in one of those private schools where you'd attend class for 20 hours per week, 4 hours a day, with a small group of other Spanish learners. You'd live in the school-provided accommodation, either a private room in an apartment with a native Spanish speaker, or a private room in a local family's house. I did the apartment thing in Granada, Spain once, and it was awesome. Then find a mini society where Spanish is spoken to spend your afternoons. Volunteer at a school or animal shelter, find a part-time job, or easier, but usually not as good, go to the same cafe habitually to study or work and make friends there. Pro tip, look for people learning English. They're usually more tolerant and make better conversation partners. Language exchanges, intercambios, are ideal. They're easy to find wherever there are students and foreigners, and they're a great way to make Spanish-speaking friends too. I'm still in touch with several people I met at intercambios over the years. When you're not in school, volunteering, or with your roommate, host family, or friends, you should spend the rest of your time doing everything I say in this video and the last, studying and practicing basically. But that's ideal, not realistic. So in this video, I'm only going to show you realistic stuff you can do from your table in a non-Spanish speaking country. Because contrary to what society tells us, you can learn a lot of Spanish from your table. But don't beat yourself up if you don't do everything I say in this video. Do what you can. If you don't have a job or kids, by all means go pedal to the metal. But if you have anything else you need to focus on, be proud if you just add one new strategy or habit to your repertoire. A little French for you there. That is French, right? I'm not saying don't be proactive. You need to be very proactive. You can spend all day watching YouTube videos and thumbing through grammar books, but if you don't do it in a deliberate, strategic fashion, you're wasting your time. Remember from the last video, learning is really a 3-step process. First focus, then understand, then practice. And practice is testing yourself repetitively to confirm you understand correctly, so everything we do must help us complete one of those steps. Focus, understand, or practice. But there's no one book, YouTube channel, or website that has everything you need. So in this video, I'll point you to the best resource I know for each subject or task. Sometimes it'll be a free video on my website or one of my premium courses, but I'll also point you to other YouTube channels, websites, and to various things on Amazon, wherever the best solution is. And links to everything are below this video or in the description. I'll say that now so I don't have to repeat it a million times. Links to everything I mentioned today are below this video or in the description. Okay, the Spanish learning world is actually divided into two distinct worlds, book Spanish and life Spanish. Some things live in both worlds, but generally, book Spanish is everything you do from a book, and life Spanish is everything you do in real life. We'll start with book Spanish. This might surprise you, but I suggest you get a good old-fashioned grammar book. I used Ultimate Spanish back in the day, and the updated version of that same book is currently available on Amazon. If you know a better grammar book, use that. I'm not saying Ultimate Spanish is the best, but it gets the job done. And the grammar book's main job is to be your guiding force. And really, the table of contents is the most important part. It's the guiding force of the guiding force. That table of contents is a detailed list of everything you need to learn. I used to leave it at that. Get a grammar book to use as your guiding force. But now you also have the battle plans I made you. The battle plans, which you should definitely download, are both more detailed and less detailed. Because when you learn something big like Spanish, sometimes it's better to lean back and take the big aerial view of things. That's what the Spanish battle plan is for. Everything you need to do to speak Spanish fits into one of 4 categories: grammar, vocabulary and expressions, sentence construction, or skills. Then, as you go through the battle plans, they get more zoomed in, because sometimes it's best to stick your nose right in there and look at the details. Oh, verb conjugation. There are 5 main tenses to learn. The present tense has 18 patterns to learn. That's nice to know, but it's also a great checklist. But I still suggest you get the grammar book. It's more than just the table of contents. That table of contents obviously leads you to lessons, dialogues, and practice exercises on every topic. Now, before we go any further, you need to know how to deal with the 2 most common recurring tasks you'll face in the world of book Spanish: learning new vocabulary and learning all the different conjugation patterns. I remember when I started out always asking myself, what word should I learn? I'm not sure how this started, but now it's so ingrained it seems like common sense. Wait, is this just common sense? Any word you see or hear but don't know, learn it. And any word you want to say but can't, learn it. The best way to do this is capture words as you identify them. I don't know about you, but there's an almost 0% chance I'll remember my thought from earlier today unless I write it down. No matter how many times I try to convince myself I'll remember, I won't. You see where I'm going? To learn the words you don't know but should, you need to capture them as you encounter them. I used to always carry a mini notebook and pen with me, and you can do the same. That way, when you see, hear, or think of a word you don't know, you can write it down immediately. Use any notebook or pen you want, but the more comfortable they are and the easier they are to get out of your pocket, the more likely you are to take them with you and use them. I personally like this small thin notebook I found on Amazon, and this little pen is cool too because it retracts but still writes when retracted. These days though, I use a digital voice recorder. I had an old one but couldn't see the screen in the dark, so I replaced it with this Sony. Not only is it backlit, but it's smaller and easier to get out of my pocket quickly. My phone does have a voice recorder app, as do most phones, but I found I wasn't using it much because first I had to take the phone out of my pocket. It's bigger, so a little harder. Then I had to unlock the phone, open the app, press record. I like the smaller, dedicated voice recorder a lot more. But do what's best for you, as long as you capture the words you want to learn as you go through your day. When you're in your grammar book and see a word you don't know, capture it. If you realize you don't know how to say something while walking down the street, capture it. If you're doing the puzzle strategy or the song strategy, we'll go over both later, and you see a word you don't know, capture it. At the beginning or end of each day, empty your notebook or voice recorder by making a flashcard for each word, English on one side, Spanish on the other. Then take those flashcards and memorize the heck out of them using the flashcard strategy. Have you seen the video I made about the flashcard strategy? It's the best way I know to memorize words quickly, but in a way you'll remember them when you need them. And it's fun too. It's like a game. In fact, if you're ever feeling down or not in the mood, do 1 round of the flashcard strategy and you'll feel better right away. Go for a 2nd round and you'll get what I call the Spanish high. Actually, we call it the Spanish high. I get messages all the time from people with the Spanish high, often accompanied by pictures of mounds of flashcards. I like that. Okay, that's how you learn vocabulary. Capture the words you want to learn, make flashcards, then use the flashcard strategy to memorize them. Now, remember in the last video we saw to learn something big like Spanish, it's best to break everything down into the smallest parts possible, then focus on each of those parts one at a time. Well, that's especially true with verb conjugation. You obviously can't sit down at your table one day and learn verb conjugation. You probably can't learn a whole tense that way either, not the present or past tenses at least. But you can learn one specific pattern in one sitting, and that's exactly what you should do. And just like with new vocabulary, you learn each new conjugation pattern in 3 steps. First, you gotta know the vocab or the infinitive form of the verb. It'll be much harder to understand why hablo means I talk and hablas means you talk if you don't know hablar means to talk. That sounds obvious, but I remember wasting a lot of time conjugating verbs I didn't even know. The second step is look over the endings, then memorize the bejeebers out of them with the conjugation strategy. I made a video all about the conjugation strategy too. It uses the same concepts as the flashcard strategy, but now to make memorizing different conjugation patterns fun, but somewhat sadistically. And that's where most people stop, which makes me sad, because to really get a pattern down, step 3 is practice those verbs all mixed up, and even better, mixed again with other patterns. Otherwise, they probably won't be ingrained enough for you to retrieve quickly enough to use in real life. I understand why most people will stop though. It's not easy to find ways to practice. When I started, the closest thing I could find was the series of books on Amazon called Practice Makes Perfect. They have one dedicated to verb tenses, which I used. It's great. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love and use those books, but they're not as focused as they could be. Like in the verb book, they introduce unrelated grammar and vocab too, which is great some other time, but not for our current task. That's why I created my premium verb conjugation bootcamps the way I did. Those courses have everything you need to master each tense. There's a present tense edition and a past tense edition. They're organized into modules, then lessons, so it's easy to focus. Then for each pattern, there's a short video so you understand how that ending works. And finally, you get practice resources out the wazoo so you can repetitively test yourself. But the special part is the practice worksheets. For each pattern, there's a dedicated practice worksheet, of course, but starting with the second pattern, there are also mixed practice worksheets. So at first, it's 2 patterns mixed together, then 3, then 4, and so on. See the power of that? Knowing a verb pattern is great, but can you switch quickly between different verbs with that pattern? What about between patterns? That's where the mixed practice worksheets really help. Now, I hate shilling my premium courses in these videos, but I made them how I did for a reason, because that's the best way to truly get this stuff down. And I wish I could give you everything for free, but to continue making these videos and live a decent life, I've got to charge for something. But here's what I can do. I just unlocked the first 2 modules of both verb courses, so you now have access to them for free. You'll see the process, then be able to use it yourself, even if you don't enroll in a course. And you really can do everything on your own. My courses just provide and organize everything for you. In case you haven't noticed, all my strategies are designed to get you little wins early and often, because wins feel good, and the good feeling you get from that little win will propel you to get more and bigger wins, which will make you feel even better. That's the Spanish high. But this isn't just about feeling good, it also happens to be the fastest way to learn stuff. For example, when you're learning new vocab, it's much harder to learn the words from English to Spanish than it is to learn them from Spanish to English. That's why I suggest you go from Spanish to English first, the easier way. Not only are you less likely to get frustrated and quit when you start in this direction, but it makes going in the harder direction, English to Spanish, much easier than it would have been because you've already seen the words a zillion times. Okay, get your grammar book and start at the beginning. Focus on the first section of the first chapter. Calmly read the words. Look at the charts. Do you understand it? If yes, you can move on to the next section, but you better really understand it because you're going to be testing yourself real soon. If you don't understand, look at it again and really focus. I wish I knew how to calm myself down and focus when I was a kid. I would have gotten way better grades and had a much happier childhood, but I didn't, and nobody taught me. Nobody even tried. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I'm not bitter. If, after you really focus, you still don't understand, it's all good. The grammar lessons in most books aren't even close to the best in the world. But it's now your job to seek and find videos, websites, or forum discussions that'll make it clear to you. I've got 100 free videos on my website and YouTube channel, so go there and search by category until you find the right video. But if I don't have what you need yet, there are a few other YouTube channels I like. There's Senor Jordan, yes, another gringo named Jordan in colorful t-shirts. He was first. The Butterfly Spanish Lady seems cool. Then I just discovered Spanish with Paul recently. He seems to really know his stuff too. My favorite website for grammar explanations is studyspanish.com. Usually I go to Google and type in what I'm looking for, like direct object pronouns Spanish. Studyspanish.com tends to be towards the top, and I like the site's formatting, but I really like discussion forums too. Now, once you understand that topic or section, go to the next section and repeat the same process. But eventually, you're gonna run into practice exercises. Do them all. And if you easily get them all correct, then you probably really do understand and can move on. But if you get any wrong, if you made any lucky guesses, it's your job to seek out ways to practice more. You've got to find ways to repetitively test yourself. The token practice exercises in most books aren't very good, and they're not nearly enough. For verb conjugation, the best way to get the practice you need is my verb conjugation bootcamp courses. We talked about that. And I'll be making more bootcamps in the future for other tenses, for pronouns, for prepositions, lots of bootcamps coming. But in the meantime, the Practice Makes Perfect series of books on Amazon is the way to go. I really feel lucky I found those when I started learning Spanish. I don't know what I would have done without them. In addition to the verb one, they have a book focused only on pronouns and prepositions. They have a complete grammar book, a book on the subjunctive. They got tons. But no matter what you do, don't skip the hard stuff. And trust me, you'll want to. Some activities are easy. Just fill in the blanks and check your answers. But others, if you're like me, will make you squirm in your seat. The hardest is when when you've got to write something completely in Spanish. But generally, the more something makes you squirm, the more it makes you sweat, the more you want to quit, the better it is for you. No pain, no gain totally applies here. Now, remember in the last video, I said one of your biggest jobs as a Spanish learner is to make decisions? Well, that's really going to come into play as you go through your grammar book. Do you start on the first page or where you think you should start? That's for you to decide. If you're in the beginning, it's usually best to start from the beginning. Surprise, surprise. If you know something really well, it won't take you much time at all. Starting from the beginning feels great because you can plunge ahead knowing for sure you didn't miss anything. Plus, you'll get some early wins this way, increase your confidence, and get into the flow of things faster. Of course, it depends on your situation. You decide. If you've been studying for years or like crazy the last few months, starting from the beginning is probably a waste of your time. Start where you think is best. No matter where you start though, you'll constantly have to decide when to stick with something until you understand it perfectly, when to stay with it long enough just to get the gist, and when to skip it altogether. There are no right or wrong choices. It depends on you, your situation, and which round you're on. When I started out, I wanted to talk to my new Spanish friends as quickly as possible. The instant my grammar book arrived in the mail, I quickly thumbed through the pages looking for anything familiar. I did this for the first half of the book probably. I had studied Spanish in high school 7 years before, and it was really exciting to see how much came flooding back. If you studied Spanish before, you gotta do this. But even if you didn't, thumb through at least the first few chapters. Keep going until it becomes gobbledygook. That's the first round. Now it's time to go for the second round, the first real round. From your starting point, begin the process we went over a few minutes ago. Go through the first section methodically. During this round, it's usually worth it to stick with the basic stuff until you really understand it. So anything in the basics section of my website, really understand and practice that stuff before you move on. However, soon they'll be throwing irregular conjugations at you left and right. This time around, you might want to skip those. Learning all the irregulars takes a long time, but you can learn the regulars quite quickly. And if you conjugate every irregular verb like it's regular, you'll still be understood always. It's better to spend your time and energy on stuff like a whole new conjugation pattern that'll enable you to say more right away. But when you learn an irregular pattern, you just learn how to say something you can already say better. Regardless, the goal is always be moving ahead. Don't get bogged down. Spend your time on the easiest stuff and the most common stuff, which is usually the most important stuff. If something gives you trouble, move on. If you think something isn't so important, move on. You'll pick them up in the next round. And by then, you'll have more context, so it'll probably make more sense right away. Remember we talked about context in the last video? Learning is actually giving context to new information. How does this new information fit in with what we already know? That's why the beginning is so hard, because everything's new. You have no context. And that's also why it's best to go in rounds like this. Skip the stuff that gives you trouble. There's a good chance when you circle back around, it'll be much clearer. Now, I guess there's a fine line between not getting bogged down and quitting when the going gets tough. Only you can decide when it's time to persevere and when it's time to pack it in and move on to the next thing. And that's book Spanish. You feeling me on this? Go through the book, focus on one thing at a time, but keep moving. Don't get bogged down or stuck. Whatever gives you trouble will be much easier when you come back to it in the next round with more context. And now it's time for life Spanish. In the world of life Spanish, you need to be even more proactive because you can't just order a book or take a course to get the practice you need. The best strategy I've got to get you speaking Spanish in real life right away is the bare minimum method. Of course, I made a video all about it, so make sure you've seen that. The bare minimum method works best when you're gonna be in a semi-predictable situation. You can see a really good example of it in action in the video Asking Directions in Spanish. In that video, I show you, with real clips from Spain, how to ask directions to any spot in any Spanish-speaking country with just 3 questions made of 7 words. But for any situation you're about to put yourself in, sit down and think to yourself, how would this situation go in English? Write that down, then figure out how to say it in Spanish. Memorize those words and phrases with the flashcard strategy, then go. Go do it in real life. If you're learning Spanish because you want to speak Spanish at work, either with your coworkers or your customers, clients, or patients, the bare minimum method is perfect for you. Start with hola and work your way up from there. But warning, in the beginning, when you're really bad, it might not be so fun for your coworkers, friends, or family members to talk to you in Spanish. Nobody wants to stand there waiting for you to say you're hungry when they have to be somewhere. What I used to say sometimes that made it better was something like, hey, I want to practice my Spanish with you. I know I'm horrible, but please know I don't expect a marathon conversation. We'll see how far I can go in Spanish, then switch to English. Cool? Hopefully I'll be able to go longer and longer in Spanish. You think you can say something like that? In English, of course. The cool thing is, if you stick with it and show improvement, they'll usually be really proud of you and actually look forward to seeing how much you improve day by day, week by week, and month by month. Another warning, there's an almost 0% chance that everything will go exactly as planned. That's totally normal. Maybe you'll feel embarrassed, maybe you won't. Regardless, you go home, you regroup, practice whatever tripped you up, learn whatever words you didn't know, and you get back out there and try the same thing again as quickly as possible. Listen, very few people end up learning Spanish for real, and the number one reason is their fear of failure. But with Spanish, and almost everything, you can't succeed without failing first. A lot. And that's not just from some meme I saw yesterday. That's how the world actually works. If you're gonna be one of the few who ends up speaking Spanish for real, you're gonna be failing for years or decades to come. I mean, you'll have plenty of success too, but I still make mistakes and embarrass myself all the time. You gotta get through that. In the last video, I gave you a specific strategy to help you with your confidence. Do that. Do whatever you need to do, but get back out there. Do not let the fear hold you back. You will get through it. You will succeed if you keep at it, and you will feel spectacular when you do. Okay, you've heard it all before. Reading, listening to music, and watching TV in Spanish is a great way to learn the language. But truthfully, in the beginning, listening to Spanish music or watching a Spanish movie won't help you very much at all. It'll be nearly impossible to even hear when one word ends and the next one starts. But you can still use all that stuff to improve your Spanish. You just have to do it the right way, strategically and deliberately, like always. Let's start with the written word. The best way to improve your Spanish from anything written is the puzzle strategy. Of course, I made a video all about it. With the puzzle strategy, you pick something interesting to read, then dissect it, word by word and line by line. At first, the puzzle strategy is really hard and takes a long time. It's totally normal to spend an hour on one paragraph, because any word you don't know, look it up. Any ending you don't recognize, figure it out. Any expression you've never heard, find it. The puzzle strategy will definitely make you squirm in your seat, but it's so powerful, it alone can serve as your guiding force, because it clearly tells you which words you don't know, which conjugation patterns you don't recognize, and the grammar rules and sentence constructions you don't understand. And if you continue doing the puzzle strategy, if you keep picking out new stuff to read, if you keep dissecting it, looking everything up, learning everything you don't know, you'll soon start to notice you're looking up less and less. You're moving faster and faster. And before you know it, guess what? You can read the whole thing. Okay, next up is the song strategy. That's a bad name. Maybe I shouldn't have called it that. Even though I first used it with music, it's good for anything with spoken Spanish, movies, TV shows, and podcasts mainly. It's the best way to improve your listening skills. I made a video all about it, but with the song strategy, we basically go through the same process we did with the puzzle strategy, but now you play one song verse or one movie scene at a time, over and over. Pick out one word the first time through, play it again. Get a few more the second, play it again. Oops, I made a mistake. I thought he said this, but he really said that. Play it again. Get the picture? I recently went to a Spanish school in Spain, and one day the teacher kinda annoyed me. He walked in with this little boombox and announced we were gonna practice our listening skills. Perfect, that's exactly what I need. He pressed play and this story started. Then the story continued, and continued, and continued. 8 minutes that story played, and I didn't understand a word. I got lost from the beginning. I was wondering about my classmates though. Did they understand more than I did? Finally, the story ended and the teacher asked if it was easy or hard. After a few moments of awkward silence, I timidly said, "Difícil?" Immediately, the rest of the class agreed emphatically, "Sí, difícil." So we sat there, totally wasting our time for 8 minutes. Playing something for 8 minutes isn't practice. Playing 1 minute over and over again, struggling with it until finally you hear what they're saying, is practice. Now, a cool thing about the song strategy is, when you're done writing what you heard, you suddenly have written Spanish. And with written Spanish, you can improve even further with the puzzle strategy. And both these strategies are great ways to meet people. In fact, I find that asking questions of any kind about Spanish, about food, saying, "Hey, I don't know this, I need your expertise," is a great way to start a conversation when you're traveling, or anytime in life. And I guess I should make it clear, listening to Spanish music passively in the background as much as possible is still beneficial. And for sure, turn on those Spanish subtitles whenever they're available. But in addition to using the puzzle strategy and the song strategy, not instead of. Now, not everybody's up for this, but one thing that helped me big time is, I love to sing. Not with anybody around, crazy, when I'm alone. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved to get the lyrics and belt out my favorite songs. So naturally, when I started learning Spanish, I did the same with Spanish music. And boy, am I glad I did. Not only did it, and still does, provide me with countless hours of entertainment, but singing, even if you don't understand what you're singing, is a great way to train your mouth, to train the brain-mouth connection. Hopefully this isn't offensive to anybody, I don't think it is, but in some ways, learning Spanish reminds me of the rehab a stroke victim has to go through, at least how it looks in the movies. We're not kids, we're adults, but we still have to train our mouths to move from the very beginning. We have to train our ears to hear like it's our first day on earth. That's why singing helps so much. At first, it'll be hard. You won't be able to get the words out fast enough and will soon fall behind. But if you keep at it, you'll be surprised how quickly you improve. Practice the tougher lines by themselves over and over until you can say them smoothly, even without singing. So, listen to Spanish music as much as possible, put Spanish subtitles on whenever they're available, and make the puzzle strategy and the song strategy a regular part of your study habits. What else can you do? I discovered this cool podcast a while back called News in Slow Spanish. Isn't that cool? It's exactly what we need. They present the news in Spanish, but slowly. Their pro membership was fairly expensive last time I checked, but every week they release a 5 to 10 minute free sample. Check it out. News in Slow Spanish, one of the best ways to practice your listening skills. Then, just last week, from some YouTube comments, I discovered this amazing series called Extra en Español by a channel called Spanish Thailand. It's this cheesy Nickelodeon-type children's sitcom thing. It's horrible, but perfect. They speak Spanish really slowly and clearly. And slow, clear Spanish is exactly what you need in the beginning. It's all you'll even have a chance of understanding. When I started learning Spanish, I soon noticed it was easier to understand other foreigners speaking Spanish than it was a native Spanish speaker. Not always, but usually. So people who aren't native Spanish speakers are usually the easiest to talk to. After that, it's easiest to understand a native Spanish speaker when they speak to you directly, but slowly and clearly. Then the next step is to understand a native Spanish speaker when they speak to you normally. Then after that, the last step is understanding native Spanish speakers when they talk amongst themselves. So if you're with a bunch of Spanish people and don't understand anything, that's normal. That's the last step, the ultimate prize. And the phone. The phone is really hard too. Everybody hates the phone. Okay, last but certainly not least is real human interaction. We touched on this before. The bare minimum method is the best way to get started. You have no chance of having real open-ended conversations in the beginning, but you can certainly master specific, predictable situations. The bare minimum method does work best when you're in a Spanish-speaking country or come into regular contact with Spanish speakers, like at work. If that's not your situation, however, there's still stuff you can do. You just have to be even more proactive. There are many websites that'll match you with a conversation partner. There are free sites, sites that cost money, some match you with native speakers, some with other Spanish learners. I personally haven't used any of these sites. My Spanish would be way better if I did, but italki seems to be the most popular one. If you like a specific site for real human interaction in Spanish, leave a link in the comments. And every town has a Mexican or Cuban restaurant, right? Go there. Go there often. The more you go, the more comfortable you'll be. The more comfortable you are, the more guts you'll have to say stuff in Spanish. It'll feel weird to speak Spanish, especially since they'll probably speak English, but just do it. There's a good chance you'll mess it up and feel like an idiot, and that's fine. That's great actually, because when you fail and feel like an idiot, by now you know you're really winning. You did what you said you were gonna do. You did what was hard, what scared you, and speaking Spanish in real life with real people, you just did that. We're talking a serious Spanish high here. Oh my god, this video is so long, but I have this whole list of endnotes I wanted to hit. Some really important stuff too. So here's what I'll do. I'm gonna make a third video. I'm not sure if it'll be a part 3 or a supplement or what. I'm leaving on a trip soon, so I might not be able to do it in the same style, like not in my studio. I'll see what I can come up with. Make sure you don't miss that video. Sign up for the Spanish Dude newsletter if you haven't already. Not only will you see my videos first, but you'll get discounts not available to the public. Then, I'll see you next time. Hasta luego. Adios, amigos.